Hi Dante. Care how tough you think you are when you're alone on a dark highway with nothing but the humming of your engine and a black void outside your windshield. The world feels different. Out there, it's not just your headlights that cut through the dark. Sometimes, something else is watching. Before I get into these stories, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a like and a comment so you don't miss future true horror encounters. Trust me, stick around until the very end. The last story will shock you in a way you won't expect. The first encounter comes from a man named Rick, who spent nearly 2 decades behind the wheel of an 80. He swore he'd seen some unsettling things on the road before: drunk drivers, overturned vehicles, even the occasional body bag after an accident. But nothing came close to what happened one cold October night in Nevada. Rick had picked up a long-haul job, running overnight through an empty desert stretch that seemed to go on forever. There wasn't a car in sight, just sand and black sky. The air was dry, the kind that makes your lips crack, and the only sound was the steady drone of his diesel engine. He said it began around 2:30 in the morning. He'd been driving for hours without a break, fighting off fatigue, when he noticed something strange up ahead. At first, it looked like a figure walking in the middle of the road. That wasn't unusual in itself. Sometimes hitchhikers or stranded drivers wandered out there, but the figure didn't move when his high beams hit them. Rick slowed down, his heart thudding. The figure stood perfectly still, wearing what looked like tattered clothing that flapped in the desert wind. He rolled down his window slightly, the cold air rushing in, and leaned to get a better look. That's when he realized the person wasn't moving at all, not even swaying, not blinking. It was as if they were frozen in place. Rick slammed his horn, the deafening blast echoing across the empty desert. Still, nothing. No reaction. The figure just stood there. As he got closer, he noticed something else. The figure's visor, what should have been its face, looked blurred, like smoke or static. It was the strangest thing he'd ever seen. It wasn't a trick of the headlights. The shape of its head was shifting ever so slightly, as if it cooled and settled on one form. His gut screamed at him not to stop, so he swerved to the side, giving it a wide berth, his truck rattling on the shoulder as he passed. For just a second, when he was side by side with the thing, he glanced over, and that's when it turned. The head snapped in his direction, not slowly, not naturally, but in a sudden jerking motion. And for the first time, Rick could make out eyes, hollow, glowing, faintly white, like a pair of flashlights, deep in the floored. Italiano. His hands clenched the wheel so tight his knuckles went pale, and he kept his eyes locked on the road ahead. But something gnawed at him, an instinct to look back, to make sure it wasn't following. Against his better judgment, he checked his side mirror. That was his mistake. The figure was gone. The desert road behind him was completely empty, but when he looked back at the road in front of him, his stomach dropped. It was there again, standing dead center in his lane, just 100 yards ahead. The same shifting face, the same hollow eyes. Rick swore his heart nearly stopped. He jerked the wheel, nearly tipping his rig, and shot down a dirt service road off the highway, dust flying behind him. His truck rattled violently, every loose item in the cab clattering to the floor. When he finally skidded to a stop, the desert fell silent. Nothing but the faint tick of the engine cooling down. His chest heaved, sweat running down his back, despite the cold air. For 10 long minutes, he sat there, scanning the darkness outside his window. His headlights showed nothing but endless dirt and brush. Finally, shaking, he turned his rig back toward the main highway, convinced he'd lost it. But as his tires hit the pavement again, his CB radio crackled to life. A voice whispered through the static. Not a trucker, not a dispatch of something else. It was faint, almost drowned out by the hiss, but he swore it said, "Keep your eyes forward." Rick didn't finish that route. He pulled off at the next rest stop, barely making it to the lot before throwing the truck into park. He left the engine running all night and sat there in the driver's seat until dawn, too afraid to close his eyes. To this day, he swears it wasn't a dream, wasn't sleep deprivation, wasn't a trick of the desert. He knows what he saw. He quit long-haul trucking the following year. And when people ask him why, he doesn't sugarcoat it. Because the road isn't empty at night, he says. You who's can tea. Always see what S out there until it wants you to. The second story comes from a man named Carl, a trucker with a reputation among his coworkers for being unshakable. He wasn't the type to buy into ghost stories, and he openly mocked the guys at truck stops who swapped tailies about haunted highways. But the night he drove through rural Kentucky, he learned some things can't be explained away with logic. Carl was hauling a refrigerated trailer full of produce, heading east on a back highway to save time. The route was narrow, winding, and completely deserted. It was close to midnight when he noticed how strange the night felt. There was no wind, no insects, not even the occasional bird or coyote that usually darted across the road. Just dead silence and his rig's headlights carving a narrow path through the trees. He lit a cigarette, cracked his window, and tried to shake off the unease, knowing at his gut. He told himself it was just nerves from being alone in the middle of nowhere. But the silence pressed in on him like a weight, making his skin crawl. Then, around one of the bends, he saw it. A car on the side of the road. Its hood was up, hazard lights blinking faintly. An old, dark sedan, maybe late 80s or early 90 segundas, covered in dust and grime. It looked like it had been sitting there for years, but the blinkers were still flashing weakly. Carl slowed down, debating whether to stop. It wasn't unusual to see stranded motorists, but something about this car felt wrong. The windows were completely blacked out, almost like they'd been painted. No interior light. No sign of movement. Still, he thought, what if someone really needed help? He eased the rig to a crawl, keeping his eyes fixed on the car. That's when he saw them. 3 people, standing just beyond the shoulder, right at the tree line. They were motionless, half hidden in the shadows, but he could clearly make out their pale faces turned toward him. He couldn't tell if they were men or women. They were just there, standing in perfect stillness, watching his truck approach. Carl's cigarette slipped from his fingers. His instincts screamed at him to keep driving, but something about their faces paralyzed him. They weren't normal faces. They looked stretched, as if the skin was too tight across their skulls. Their eyes large and unblinking, and the way they stood side by side, shoulder to shoulder, looked almost staged. Asipased kept glancing at them through his side mirror, and that's when the hair on the back of his neck stood up. All 3 figures turned their heads in perfect unison, following his truck as it rolled past. Their bodies didn't move, only their heads, rotating with unnatural precision. Carl stomped the accelerator, hearts hammering, trying to convince himself he was imagining it. He told himself they were just weird locals, maybe drug addicts or squatters. Anything but what his gut was telling him. But a mile down the road, his headlights caught something else. Another car. Same make and model, same dust, same faintly blinking hazards, and 3 more figures, standing by the tree line, pale faces pointed toward the road. This time, Carl didn't slow down. He gripped the wheel, knuckles white, and blew past. And nearly 70. He refused to look at them, refused to check the mirrors. His brain screamed at him not to acknowledge them, but the road kept curving, and around each bend, another car appeared. Identical. Same hazards, same figures, always 3 of them. Always standing at the tree line, their faces catching the glow of his lights, just enough for him to see those huge, unblinking eyes. It happened again and again, 5, 6 times in total. The same scene repeating like a broken film reel. By the 7th car, Carl was nearly in tears. His breathing came fast and shallow, sweat dripping down his temples. His rational mind was gone. All that remained was raw animal terror. He refused to stop, refused to blink, refused to acknowledge the horror surrounding him. Finally, the road straightened, and he saw the blessed glow of a small truck stop in the distance. Its neon sign flickered like salvation. He pulled in, slammed the brakes, and sat trembling in his cab. Unable. After a long while, he forced himself to get out. The cool night air hit his face, grounding him. Inside, The place was nearly empty, just a tired cashier and another trucker drinking coffee at the counter. Carl sat down and ordered a coffee, trying to calm his nerves. But when the waitress asked where he'd come from, he froze. "Highway 76, he muttered, her face drained of color. She set the pot down slowly, then leaned closer. "You didn't stop, did you?" Carl's blood ran cold. "No." "Why?" The woman shook her head, eyes darting to the window as if afraid something might be listening. "Good," she whispered. "They don't like it when you stop." Carl left his coffee untouched. He climbed back into his truck, locked the doors, and waited until daylight before daring to get back on the road. He never drove Highway 76 again, and when people asked him why, he always added hours to his route. He just said the same thing. Because out there, you might see them, and if you do, never stop. The final story comes from a driver named Henry, a veteran of the road who had seen it all: bad weather, near accidents, even a tornado once in Kansas. But what happened to him on a stretch of empty road in northern Arizona made him leave trucking for good. Henry had always been the type who loved night driving. He enjoyed the solitude, the quiet, the way the stars looked out in the desert, when there were no city lights to drown them out. It gave him peace, or at least, it used to. One night, around 3 a.m., Henry was pushing through a long, desolate stretch of highway. He hadn't seen another vehicle for nearly 2 hours, and his eyelids were getting heavy. He slapped himself lightly on the cheek, cranked up the radio, and rolled down the window to stay alert. That's when he noticed something unusual in his rearview mirror. A pair of headlights appeared far in the distance behind him. At first, he felt relieved. Another vehicle meant he wasn't completely alone out there, but the relief didn't last. The lights were moving too fast, way too fast. Henry's stomach tightened as he watched them close the distance unnaturally quickly, until within seconds, they were right on his bumper. The blinding glare flooded his cab, making it impossible to see clearly. He honked and motioned for the driver to back off. The car didn't budge. Instead, it swerved from side to side, as though trying to push him off the road. Cursing under his breath, Henry pressed harder on the accelerator, the roar of the engine filling his ears. But no matter how fast he went, the lights clung to him, weaving and darting erratically in his mirror. Then, just as suddenly as they'd appeared, the lights vanished. 1 second they were there so close he thought the car would ram him, and the next, nothing. Total darkness behind him. Henry's heart pounded. He slowed slightly, scanning the empty road in disbelief. No Tita-Skeel engine noise, no sign of another vehicle at all. Shake on, he told himself. It must have been a trick of fatigue. Maybe even a hallucination. He tried to convince himself of that until a voice came through his CB radio. A man's voice. Calm, steady. "You shouldn't be out here alone." Henry froze. He hadn't touched the CB all night. His hand trembled as he reached for the mic, his throat dry. "Who is this?" he asked. Silence. Then, the headlights appeared again, not behind him this time. In front, a pair of blinding lights sat dead center of the road, facing him. There was no sound of an approaching engine, no gradual appearance, just instant, searing brightness, as if they'd been waiting for him. Henry swerved violently, his rig nearly tipping over, gravel exploding under his tires as he fought to stay on the road. His horn blasted into the night, his chest pounding with terror. When he finally straightened out and looked back, the lights were gone again. The desert stretched endlessly ahead. No cars, no headlights, no sign of anything. He pulled over, shaking, sweat dripping down his temples despite the cold night air. He sat there, engine idling, trying to catch his breath. That's when he noticed something in his passenger seat, a scrap of paper. He hadn't seen it there before. His cab was clean, he prided himself on it. But now a single, folded sheet sat neatly on the worn leather. Hands trembling, he picked it up and unfolded it. Scrawled across the page, in shaky handwriting, were 4 words. "Keep your eyes forward." Henry dropped the paper like it was on fire. His heart felt like it might explode out of his chest. He scanned the cab frantically, checking the doors, the sleeper, the mirrors. He was alone. He had to be alone. But when he finally forced himself to look back at the road, his blood ran cold. Far in the distance, maybe half a mile ahead, a pair of headlights flickered to life. Dim at first, then brighter. Waiting. He didn't remember much after that. He drove until the sun came up, numb with terror, and pulled into the first town he could find. When he checked his cab in daylight, the paper was gone. Henry turned in his resignation the following week. He sold his rig and never drove long haul again. And when people asked him why, his answer was always the same. Because some nights, when the road looks empty, it isn't. 3 men, 3 different highways, 3 encounters that defy explanation. Whether you believe them or not, truckers know untruths better than anyone else. The road at night holds secrets most people will never see. And sometimes, if you're unlucky, it sees you first. That's the end of this story. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment sharing your own experiences on the road or anywhere you've felt that chilling sense of being watched. Your support helps bring more terrifying true stories like this to life. And remember, the next time you're driving on an empty road in the dead of night, keep your eyes forward.